Welcome back. And now with the news in detail, Iran has admitted it shot down the Ukrainian passenger plane, saying the accident was caused by human error. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has demanded a full investigation and admission of guilt and compensation from Iran.
176 people were killed when their plane crashed just after takeoff near the capital, Tehran, last week. There were 63 Canadian nationals on board the ill-fated flight. Iran initially denied reports that one of its missiles had brought down the Ukrainian plane. Pressure quickly mounted when Western intelligence officials said evidence pointed to Iranian involvement. Iran's armed forces say the aircraft was flying close to a sensitive military site and was brought down unintentionally. President Hassan Rouhani said Iran deeply regrets the accidental shooting down of the airliner. He said investigations will continue to identify and prosecute the great tragedy and unforgivable mistake. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau described the crash as a national tragedy and demanded a transparent probe into the incident.
EU foreign ministers have backed away from an immediate response to Iran's decision to intensify its enrichment of uranium. However, the US has imposed new sanctions on Tehran. More in this report.
Fearing an open conflict between Iran and the US, EU foreign ministers held a rare emergency meeting to call for calm. In the meeting, the bloc repeated their call for Tehran to respect the limits of a 2015 nuclear arms control accord. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said the region cannot afford another war and called for an urgent de-escalation. Borrell said the EU wants to ease tensions by reaffirming the bloc's commitment to preserve the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action.
We regret that the United States decided to withdraw unilaterally from this agreement. And we do whatever we can. Instead, it's one of the tools that we are building in order to allow a continuous economic transaction with Iraq. That's true that until now it hasn't worked, not yet.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury Department has imposed more sanctions on Iran in retaliation for its missile attack on U.S. forces in Iraq this week. The targets of the sanctions include senior officials and manufacturing, mining, and textile sectors. The sanctions were announced by U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin in an appearance at the White House, alongside U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
First, the President is issuing an executive order authorizing the imposition of additional sanctions against any individual owning, operating, trading with, or assisting sectors of the Iranian economy, including construction, manufacturing, textiles, and mining. And let me be clear, these will be both primary and secondary sanctions.
Washington also vowed to further tighten the screws on the Iranian economy if Tehran continues to engage in what it describes as terrorist acts.
World leaders have actively started easing tensions in the Middle East. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has embarked on a 5-day trip to the Middle East as Tokyo seeks to help stabilize the region.
Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said Abe will go to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Oman for talks with their leaders. During the trip, Abe will brief leaders of the three countries on the deployment of Japanese self-defense forces to the Middle East. Earlier, 2 Japanese patrol planes left Okinawa for the Middle East as Tokyo's first long-term intelligence gathering mission abroad. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Angela Merkel is also arriving in Moscow today to hold talks with Russia's President Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin said both the leaders will discuss global issues, including the escalation in the Middle East and the situation in Syria and Libya. The Kremlin said talks will also include resolving conflict in Ukraine based on agreements reached on the Normandy summit in December.
Despite massive protests, the Indian government has issued a notification stating the Citizenship Act has come into effect. The anti-Muslim law caused a strong stir across the country as 27 people died protesting against it. In a notification, the Home Affairs Ministry said under Section 1 of Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, the law has come into force. Under the law, the citizenship will be given to persecuted religious minorities except Muslims. The law, presented by Home Affairs Minister Amit Shah, was passed by the Parliament on 11th of December. Three major states of West Bengal, Punjab and Kerala have already refused to implement the controversial act. In India, thousands of people have rallied in Kolkata as Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived there for a two-day visit. They gathered outside the Kolkata airport, carrying posters and chanting slogans against Prime Minister Modi. Protesters say the BJP is dividing people through the new citizenship law. They call for immediate withdrawal of the Anti-Muslim Act. Protests against Prime Minister Modi were also staged in other parts of West Bengal. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says an extremist ideology of Hindutva has taken over a nuclear-armed India. He said the ideology is based on racial superiority and hatred of Muslims as well as minorities. The Prime Minister said whenever a genie of such ideology has come out of the bottle, it has always led to bloodshed. PM Khan's statement came a day after the Indian government put controversial citizenship law in force. The UN Security Council has voted to renew cross-border aid to Syria, but halved the program to avoid a Russian veto. The assistance for millions in the war-ravaged country is being extended for 6 months. The resolution was passed by 11 votes in favor and 4 abstentions, which came from Russia, China, the US and Britain. Under the new resolution, aid will be delivered only through 2 checkpoints on the border with Turkey. Belgium and France expressed disappointment at the reduction of humanitarian aid. US Ambassador Kelly Croft said Russia will be responsible for the deaths in Syria because of the lack of assistance. Earlier in December, Russia vetoed a proposal to extend aid for a year from 3 crossings. The leader of Oman, Sultan Qaboos bin Said Al Said, has died after ruling the country for 49 years. His cousin, Haytham bin Tariq Al Said, has been sworn in as the new royal ruler.
A 3-day period of mourning has been declared in the country. Leaders across the world have expressed their condolences on the Sultan's demise. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan said Qaboos was a visionary leader and transformed Muscat into a vibrant state. Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed said Oman, the Arab and Islamic world have lost a wise leader. US Embassy in Oman said Sultan's steadfast leadership embodied his sincerity, tolerance and deep love for the country. Sultan Qaboos was unmarried and had no heir or designated successor. The 79-year-old monarch had ruled the Sultanate since 1970 after deposing his father in a bloodless coup with British support. He transformed Oman into a modern state and was the Arab world's longest reigning leader. Last month, Qaboos returned home after undergoing medical checks and treatment in Belgium.
Tunisia's parliament has rejected Prime Minister Habib Jamli's proposed new government in a confidence vote. President Kais Saied has 10 days to select an independent person to build a coalition able to command a majority in the parliament. Members of the parliament defeated the vote for Jamli's proposed cabinet by 134 votes to 72. Tunisia will hold new elections if the new person can't form a coalition government within a month. Jamli was nominated by the Ennahda party, which won the October 2019 polls but failed to secure a majority in the parliament. Tunisia has been in a state of turmoil since former dictator Zain al-Abidin bin Ali's regime was overthrown in 2011. In Libya, 20 fighters of General Khalifa Haftar's army have been killed in airstrikes in southern Tripoli. Libya's UN-recognized Government of National Accord said the strikes also destroyed 2 armored vehicles. A GNA military spokesman said the vehicles belong to the United Arab Emirates. Meanwhile, Russia said it is trying to implement the ceasefire suggested by President Vladimir Putin and President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Earlier, Haftar's Libyan National Army rejected the call for a ceasefire, saying it will not stop the campaign against the rival factions in Tripoli. In April, the eastern-based LNA launched a military campaign to capture Tripoli from the internationally recognized government. 12 people are dead after a boat loaded with asylum seekers sank in the Ionian Sea near the west coast of Greece. The Greek Coast Guard said 20 people have been rescued alive. The Coast Guard said search and rescue operation continues to look for 18 missing people. 6 Coast Guard patrol boats and 2 Navy helicopters are engaged in the continuing rescue effort. The boat, with 50 people on board, took on water near the island of Paxi during an apparent attempt to reach Italy. Thousands of migrants and refugees have died in recent years while attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea. In India, 20 passengers have died and 21 others were injured after a bus burst into flames in Uttar Pradesh state. Police say the double-decker bus caught fire after a head-on collision with a truck on the highway near the city of Kanauji. It said 46 passengers were on board the bus when the accident happened. Officials say only 10 of the 12 passengers escaped the burning bus, while others were unable to escape. More stories to follow right after a show. Welcome back. In Taiwan, counting is underway after millions of people voted to elect a new president. Tsai Ing-wen is not in favor of closer ties with Beijing, while her main rival, Han Kuo-yu, promises to ease tensions with China. Elections for Taiwan's legislature, where Tsai's party held a majority, are also taking place. 19 million people are registered to vote in the election. Beijing sees Taiwan as a renegade province and says it will one day retake the island by force if necessary. In Georgia's breakaway Abkhazia region, Parliament will hold a session today to discuss the country's political situation. The emergency session comes after the Supreme Court annulled the results of September's presidential election. Opposition leader Aslan Bazhania said setting a date for the new election could resolve the current political crisis. Abkhazia's Central Election Commission said it will propose a date for a new presidential election within the next 5 days. Abkhazia's crisis blew up on January the 9th when protesters stormed President Raul Khenba's office demanding his resignation. In Chile, demonstrators have clashed with security forces in the capital Santiago as protests flared up once again. Water cannon was used on protesters who threw missiles at police in riot gear near the iconic Plaza Italia. Since October, Chile has been rocked by protests over a rise in public transport fares that later broadened to include calls for better healthcare and education. On December the 23rd, President Sebastián Piñera signed off on a referendum to be held on a new constitution. He said the new constitution would generate a solid, compassionate and legitimate framework to help reunify the country. In Australia's New South Wales, 3 bushfires merged to create a massive blaze in the Snowy Mountains. 233,000 hectares of Green Valley fire merged with the nearby East Oni Creek blaze, creating a single blaze 3 times larger than any known fire in California. Fires in the region have destroyed over 1,000 homes since the new year. Officials say danger is equally great further south in Victoria, as forecasts are for more heat, strong winds and dry lighting. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of people across Australia took part in climate change protests. China has kicked off a dazzling light show in the southwest of the Sichuan province to celebrate the Spring Festival. A lantern show has attracted thousands of visitors on the first day. More in this report.
The Diyang Lantern Show is China's traditional event during the Spring Festival. This year, the traditions have been perfectly combined with modern technologies, offering an audio-visual feast to the visitors. A total of 18 themed landscapes and 56 sets of lights and water screen projections are arranged with a sense of fashion.
This year's lantern show is very different from the previous traditional ones. It is so festive and jolly here, bringing back many beautiful childhood memories.
Recreational facilities and delicious snacks were also offered to the visitors. Thousands of people across the country are reuniting in their hometowns to greet the new lunar year.
We hope that through this lantern show, the residents in Dayang can have a happy and prosperous new year. We also hope to bring more joy to to everyone visiting the Lantern Show.
The Lantern Show will run till February 16 as a measure of the local government to boost festival tourism.
The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration could levy a $5.4 million fine against Boeing for faulty wing parts on dozens of 737 MAX planes. The aircraft have been grounded worldwide since March after 2 fatal crashes. Boeing says a former chief executive, Denise Muhlenberg, who was criticized for his handling of the crisis, will receive no severance package. The company said Muhlenberg left Boeing with stock options and other assets worth $80 million. Dave Calhoun, who had been serving as chairman of Boeing since October, will assume the position of CEO on Monday. In Florida, the 1968 Bullitt Ford Mustang has been sold for $3.4 million at the Mecum auctions in Kissimmee. This is the highest price ever paid for a Ford Mustang at the auction. The hammer price beat the 2019 record of $2.2 million for Shelby Super Snake. The Ford Mustang that Steve McQueen drove in classic car chase movie Bullitt is one of the most famed cars from American cinema. The buyer has not been publicly identified. And now the weather situation from around the globe. That's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.